Welcome to Motivational Humanity. You are not alone.
Life has a way of surprising us. Sometimes the future shows up as an answered prayer. Other times it walks in wearing heartbreak, loss, or uncertainty. The truth is, we don't always get to choose what comes next, but we do get to choose who we are when it arrives. Preparing your soul isn't about control, it's about courage. It's about showing up grounded, open, and strong enough to receive what life is bringing, whether it's a blessing, a lesson, or both. There comes a moment in life when you realize that the only foundation strong enough to hold you steady is the truth. Not the version of the truth that makes you look good, not the story you tell so people won't judge you, not the smile you wear to convince the world you're fine when you're breaking inside. I mean the raw, unpolished, unfiltered truth of who you are and where you are right now. Anchoring yourself in truth is not about perfection, it's about liberation. It's about refusing to keep living as a stranger to your own soul. We all know what it feels like to wear masks. We learn it young, smile even when you're hurting, pretend you're strong even when you're terrified, nod along even when your heart is screaming, no. And the world rewards it. People pat you on the back for being strong, for being easygoing, for being the one who always holds it together. But inside it feels like you're slowly disappearing. Because the longer you hide your truth, the further you drift from yourself. And here's the thing, life will always expose the places where we're pretending. If you don't confront your truth willingly, life will eventually push you into it. Anchoring yourself in truth begins with courage. Courage to sit with yourself and ask, what am I pretending isn't hurting me? What am I pretending doesn't matter? Where am I lying to myself because it feels easier than facing reality? These are not easy questions, they burn. They stir up shame. They threaten the image you've built of who you're supposed to be. But truth, as uncomfortable as it is the soil where freedom grows. Think about it. When you're living in half-truths, you're constantly exhausted. You're playing a role, editing your words, second, guessing what part of yourself you can show. But when you anchor yourself in truth, that exhaustion lifts. You stop hustling for approval because you're standing on something unshakable, your own reality. You stop fearing exposure because you're no longer hiding. And you stop pretending to be invincible because you've learned that your humanity is not a liability, it's your power. Anchoring yourself in truth also means learning to embrace the whole picture. Not just the pretty parts, not just the accomplishments you post online, not just the moments you'd proudly share at a dinner table. It means looking at your failures, your regrets, your patterns, your shadows, and saying, this is me too. Because the moment you stop denying your darkness, you stop being ruled by it. You bring it into the light where healing can happen. Sometimes truth is painful. The truth might be that your marriage is unraveling. The truth might be that you're carrying bitterness that's poisoning your joy. The truth might be that you're staying in a job that crushes your spirit because you're afraid of change. Or maybe the truth is that you're lonely, deeply lonely, even in a room full of people. And here's what I need you to know, facing that truth doesn't break you. Denying it does. Truth doesn't destroy, it demands honesty, and in that honesty, it opens a doorway to freedom. Anchoring yourself in truth also changes your relationships. Because when you are grounded in who you really are, you stop negotiating your worth. You stop settling for connections that require you to shrink. You stop bending yourself into someone else's version of lovable. Truth sets the boundary. It says, this is who I am. This is what I value. This is what I can give. This is what I can no longer tolerate. And that honesty might cost you some people. But trust me when I say, the relationships that survive your truth are the ones your soul can actually rest in. And anchoring in truth doesn't just mean telling the truth to others. Sometimes the hardest person to be honest with is yourself. We numb ourselves with business, with scrolling, with overworking, with pretending everything is okay. We build these walls so we don't have to admit that we're scared or grieving or longing for more. But preparing your soul for what's coming requires tearing those walls down and facing yourself in the mirror. It requires saying, I'm tired of living half a life. I'm tired of editing myself to make others comfortable. I'm tired of running from the truth that keeps following me. When you finally anchor yourself in truth, a strange thing happens. You start to breathe deeper. You stop apologizing for taking up space. You start to feel grounded, not because life is suddenly easy, but because you're no longer divided against yourself. You're no longer fighting an inner war between who you are and who you pretend to be. And that alignment, that integrity, is what prepares your soul for what's coming. Because whatever the future holds, whether it's joy or pain, gain or loss, you will meet it standing on solid ground. Anchoring in truth is not a one-time event. It's a daily practice. It's waking up and choosing honesty again and again. It's being brave enough to say, this is my reality today, and I'm going to face it. Some days that truth will be beautiful. I'm proud of myself, I'm growing, I'm stronger than I thought. Other days it will be heavy. I'm hurting, I'm lost, I need help. But both are holy. Both are real. Both are worthy of being honored. The truth is never your enemy. The lies you tell yourself to avoid it, that's what will wreck you. Truth, even when it's sharp, even when it cuts deep, is always trying to set you free. It's trying to bring you home to yourself. It's trying to ground your soul so that when life shakes you, and it will, you won't collapse. You'll bend, you'll stumble, maybe even fall to your knees. But you'll rise again, because you're rooted in something stronger than fear, the unshakable ground of truth. So if you want to prepare your soul for what's coming, begin here. Begin with truth. Begin with the courage to say, this is me. The messy parts, the tender parts, the resilient parts, the whole of me. And I will no longer hide, because when you stand in truth, you are unshakable. And when you are unshakable, the future has nothing to fear from you, and you have nothing to fear from the future. Faith is one of those words that we toss around often, but few of us stop long enough to realize how much of our life depends on it. Every time you wake up and trust that the sun will rise, that gravity will hold you to the ground, that your next breath will come, you are exercising faith. And yet when it comes to the deeper parts of our lives, the heartbreaks, the disappointments, the unknowns, we suddenly forget that faith is available to us there too. Strengthening your faith muscle isn't about memorizing a list of religious rules, and it isn't about pretending everything will always be fine. Strengthening your faith muscle is about building the capacity to stand in uncertainty and still trust that you are not alone, that life is still holding you, that even in the dark there is light waiting to break through. The reason I call it a muscle is because, just like any other muscle, faith grows stronger the more you use it. But here's the paradox: faith doesn't grow in comfort. It grows in discomfort. You don't need faith when everything is going according to plan. You don't need faith when you can see the outcome clearly and control every detail. Faith becomes necessary when the ground beneath you is shaking, when you've run out of answers, when the plan you had carefully built falls apart. It is in those moments of vulnerability and helplessness that faith either rises or withers. And like every muscle, it grows by resistance. It grows when you lean into what feels impossible. Strengthening your faith muscle begins with surrender. And surrender is one of the hardest things we will ever learn. Most of us have built our lives on self-reliance, on control, on the idea that if we just work harder, plan better, stay tougher, we can make life bend to our will. But faith whispers something different. Faith says, you cannot control everything, and that's not weakness, that's reality. Faith doesn't ask you to stop working or stop showing up. It asks you to release the illusion that you can control outcomes. It asks you to put down the heavy burden of trying to play God in your own life. It asks you to admit that sometimes you don't know, sometimes you can't see, sometimes you can't fix it. And in that humility, in that surrender, faith begins to rise. Strengthening your faith also requires learning to trust the unseen. That is terrifying because we are wired for certainty. We want to know. We want proof. We want guarantees. But the deepest transformations of our lives rarely come with guarantees. You don't get to see the entire staircase before you take the first step. You don't get to know the ending before you begin the journey. Strengthening your faith means moving forward with courage, even when the path is hidden, even when all you can see is the next step. And every time you do, You're building your capacity to trust what you cannot yet see. One of the most beautiful things about faith is that it doesn't erase fear. It teaches you how to walk with it. Some people think if they had enough faith, they wouldn't be afraid. That's not true. Faith doesn't cancel fear, it carries you through it. Faith says, yes, this is scary. Yes, this hurts. Yes, you're uncertain. But keep walking. And the more you practice that, the more you realize that fear doesn't have to be the end of your story. It can be the beginning of a deeper strength. Strengthening your faith muscle also means remembering the times when you made it through what you thought you couldn't. Think back to the seasons in your life when you were sure you were done, when the heartbreak was unbearable, when the loss hollowed you out, when the weight was too much. And yet, here you are, you survived. You grew. You are stronger, wiser, deeper because of it. Sometimes faith is simply looking back at your own history and saying, if I made it through that, I can make it through this. Memory becomes a testimony, and testimony becomes strength. Another way we strengthen our faith muscle is through community. Faith is personal, but it's not meant to be solitary. Sometimes when your own faith feels too small, you need the borrowed faith of someone else. You need people who will stand beside you and whisper hope when you've lost your voice. You need people who will remind you of the bigger picture when you can only see the rubble in front of you. Strengthening your faith muscle means choosing to walk with people who lift you, not those who drain you. People who remind you that hope is real, not those who feed your despair. And then there's gratitude. Gratitude is one of the simplest but most powerful ways to strengthen faith. Because when you stop to notice what's good right here, right now, you begin to realize that even in the chaos, even in the heartbreak, even in the waiting, there are gifts. Gratitude doesn't erase pain, but it expands your vision. It reminds you that there is still beauty, still kindness, still reasons to trust. And when you practice gratitude, even in small ways, you're teaching your soul to look for evidence of hope instead of evidence of despair. That's faith in action. Strengthening your faith muscle also means shifting your focus from outcomes to presence. So much of our fear comes from obsessing about how things will turn out. Will I get the job? Will the relationship last? Will the healing come? Faith doesn't promise specific outcomes. Faith promises presence. It promises that no matter what happens, you will not be alone, you will not be abandoned, you will not walk through the valley without a hand to hold. When you stop demanding certainty about outcomes and start resting in the presence that never leaves you, your faith becomes unshakable. And let's be honest, sometimes strengthening faith means wrestling with doubt. We think doubt disqualifies us, but it doesn't. Doubt is part of faith. Doubt is what happens when your heart is stretching beyond what it can see. And wrestling with doubt doesn't mean you have no faith. It means you're growing it. Think about how a muscle grows by tearing and repairing. The fibers break, and in the healing they become stronger. Doubt works the same way. It tears the old assumptions, the shallow beliefs, the easy answers. And when you keep wrestling, when you keep showing up in the struggle, your faith comes back deeper, stronger, more resilient than before. At the heart of strengthening your faith muscle is trust. Trust that there is more to your story than what you can see right now. Trust that the pain you're carrying is not wasted. Trust that the detour is not the end. Trust that even in the silence, something holy is happening. Trust that you are held. And trust doesn't come all at once. It comes in small acts, choosing to breathe when panic rises, choosing to pray when you feel abandoned, choosing to take the next step when you don't see the road ahead. So if you want to prepare your soul for what's coming, you have to strengthen your faith muscle. Not someday, not when the storm passes, not when you feel ready now. Start small. Start with one act of surrender. Start with one prayer whispered in the dark. Start with one decision to believe that you are not alone. Because every small act of faith is like lifting a weight. You may not notice the strength building immediately, but over time, your soul becomes steady, grounded, resilient. And when the future comes, whether with blessing or with loss, you will be ready. Not because you've eliminated fear, not because you've controlled the outcome, but because you've built a faith strong enough to carry you through anything. There's a reason we avoid healing. Healing requires us to face what we'd rather bury, to sit with pain we thought we outran, to open doors we've locked for years. Avoidance feels easier in the moment. We distract ourselves with business, with work, with scrolling, with noise. We tell ourselves, I'll deal with that later, or I've already moved on. But here's the hard truth: what you don't heal will keep following you. The wounds you ignore don't disappear, they just get louder in different ways. Through anxiety, through anger, through broken relationships, through an emptiness you can't explain. If you want to prepare your soul for what's coming, you have to stop avoiding and start healing. Avoidance is seductive because it feels like safety. We think, if I don't think about it, it can't hurt me. But avoidance is not safety, it's a prison. It keeps you small, it keeps you fragile, it keeps you repeating the same cycles over and over. The very things you're running from, grief, shame, guilt, heartbreak, are the things that, once faced, will become the ground of your strength. Healing doesn't erase what happened. It transforms what happened into wisdom, into resilience, into a story you can carry without being crushed by it. So how do we heal what we've been avoiding? The first step is courage. Healing starts with choosing to stop running. To sit down with yourself and say, this hurts. This has always hurt. And it's time I stop pretending it doesn't. That's terrifying because it means letting yourself feel what you've numbed for so long. It means tears you've swallowed might finally come out. It means admitting you're not as over it as you claim to be. But here's the thing: feeling is not the enemy. Feeling is the path through. The only way out of pain is through it, not around it. Healing also requires honesty. You can't heal what you refuse to name. Maybe the wound is betrayal, and you've been telling yourself, it wasn't that bad, I should be over it by now. Maybe the wound is failure, and you've convinced yourself you don't care. Maybe the wound is abuse, and you've buried it so deep you don't even want to say the words out loud. But honesty is the key that unlocks healing. When you tell the truth about your wound, you take back its power, because what you keep in the dark grows heavier. What you bring into the light begins to lose its grip. Part of healing is also learning to forgive. Not always others first, but yourself. Some of the deepest wounds we carry are the ones we inflicted on ourselves, the choices we regret, the opportunities we wasted, the people we hurt when we weren't at our best. Avoiding that pain might look like endless self-criticism, or pretending it doesn't matter, or drowning in shame. But true healing means looking at yourself with compassion. It means saying, I did the best I could with who I was and what I knew then, and now I'm ready to grow. Forgiveness doesn't mean excusing harm. It means refusing to live chained to it any longer. Healing what you've been avoiding will also demand patience. Wounds don't close overnight. Some pain is layered, and each time you peel back a layer, more truth emerges. That's okay. Healing isn't a straight line, it's a spiral. Some days you'll feel like you're finally free, and the next day the wound will ache again. That doesn't mean you're failing, it means you're still human. Growth comes in waves, and healing comes in seasons. The work is to keep showing up for yourself again and again, until the wound no longer bleeds into your future. One of the biggest lies avoidance tells us is that if we ignore the wound, time will heal it. But time doesn't heal wounds, attention does. Time can dull the edges, yes. Time can create distance. But unhealed wounds still leak. They leak into how you trust, how you love, how you show up. They leak into your self-worth, your choices. That's your ability to dream. That's why people find themselves repeating the same unhealthy patterns, choosing partners who hurt them the same way, sabotaging opportunities the same way, carrying the same anger into new chapters. It's not bad luck. It's an unhealed wound steering the ship. Healing what you've avoided breaks that cycle so your past doesn't keep scripting your future. Another piece of healing is allowing yourself to grieve. Grief is not just about death. It's about the loss of what could have been, the loss of innocence, the loss of time, the loss of the version of you who never got what she needed. Avoidance tells us, don't look back, just keep moving forward. But grief says, pause, honor what was lost, cry for what should have been. Grief is not weakness. Grief is love in motion. Grief is acknowledgement that something mattered. And when you let yourself grieve, Your heart creates space for new joy to enter. Healing is also relational. Sometimes you can't do it alone. Sometimes the wound is too heavy, and you need safe people to hold it with you. Maybe that's a therapist, maybe it's a trusted friend, maybe it's a mentor who's walked the same road. Avoidance isolates you, healing invites connection. There's something powerful about saying your truth out loud to someone who won't flinch, who won't shame you, who simply says, "Me too. I see you. You're not broken beyond repair." Healing happens in the presence of compassion. But perhaps the hardest and most powerful part of healing is choosing to let go of the identity you built around your wound. Avoidance often keeps us stuck because, deep down, we've made pain part of who we are. We cling to the identity of the abandoned one, the failure, the unworthy one, because as painful as it is, it's familiar. Healing requires the courage to step into a new identity, one that says, "I am more than what happened to me. I am not my wound. I am not my past. I am whole. I am worthy. I am free." That shift is terrifying because it asks you to let go of what you've known. But it's also where your freedom begins. When you finally start healing what you've been avoiding, the future doesn't feel so frightening anymore. Because you're no longer carrying the weight of old battles into new seasons. You're no longer expecting tomorrow to pay the debts of yesterday. You're no longer sabotaging yourself because of a story you never rewrote. Healing prepares your soul by making room for new life, new hope, new love. It clears out the clutter of old pain so you can step into the next chapter lighter, braver, more open. Avoidance might feel like protection, but it's actually a slow erosion of your spirit. Healing, though painful, is what makes you whole. And wholeness is what your future deserves. So stop running, sit with the wound, name it, feel it, tend to it. Ask for help if you need it. And trust that healing is not about erasing the scar, but about learning to live with it in a way that no longer controls you. Because your soul cannot carry yesterday's unhealed pain into tomorrow's possibility. To prepare for what's coming, you must finally turn toward what you've been avoiding and let it heal. We've been taught to believe that strength means building walls, toughening up, and showing the world a version of ourselves that cannot be touched. We call it being strong, but most of the time it's just armor. Armor that keeps us safe in the moment, but also keeps us disconnected, heavy, and lonely. Building outer armor might protect you from immediate pain, but it also shields you from the very things that give life meaning: love, belonging, connection, vulnerability. If you want to prepare your soul for what's coming, you have to trade that heavy armor for something more enduring, more powerful, more freeing inner resilience. Outer armor says, "I won't let anyone see me cry." Inner resilience says, "I can cry and still keep moving forward." Outer armor says, "I won't let anyone hurt me again." Inner resilience says, "Even if I'm hurt, I know I can heal and rise." Armor is about control and fear. Resilience is about courage and trust. One keeps you hard and closed off. The other makes you flexible, strong, and alive. The problem with armor is that it demands constant maintenance. You have to keep it polished, keep it in place, keep it thick enough to survive. It's exhausting. You start building layers to guard against rejection, layers to guard against disappointment, layers to guard against failure. Before long, you're so weighed down by your own defenses that you can't even move freely. You can't breathe deeply. You can't experience joy because joy requires openness, and armor doesn't allow that. Resilience, on the other hand, doesn't ask you to shut down. It asks you to open up and trust your own ability to bounce back. Think of resilience like a tree in a storm. A tree doesn't survive because it's made of stone. It survives because it can bend with the wind without breaking. That's what inner resilience does for your soul. It allows you to bend, to feel, to risk, and still rise again. Armor resists the wind, resilience moves with it. And the difference between the two is the difference between a life that feels suffocating and a life that feels expansive. So how do you build inner resilience? First, you have to stop confusing numbness with strength. We often think we're being strong when we say, "I don't care, it doesn't bother me, I'm fine." But resilience isn't about pretending you're unbothered. It's about admitting when something hurts and choosing to keep going anyway. It's about being honest with your emotions, not shutting them down. pain is not a weakness. Avoiding pain is what weakens us. The willingness to feel, to face what is real, is what builds resilience over time. Second, resilience comes from embracing failure as part of growth. Armor hates failure. It sees it as proof of weakness. That's why armored people avoid risks, avoid dreams, avoid vulnerability. But resilient people, they understand that failure is not the end. It's information. It's a teacher. Every stumble, every rejection, every disappointment is a chance to build strength you didn't know you had. Resilience says, I am not defined by this failure. I am defined by how I rise from it. When you adopt that mindset, the fear of falling no longer paralyzes you, because you've proven to yourself that you can stand up again. Another part of building resilience is learning to regulate your inner world. When life shakes you, your first instinct might be to lash out, to collapse, to numb out, to shut down. But resilience asks you to pause, breathe, and ground yourself before reacting. It's not about denying your emotions. It's about learning how to sit with them without letting them drown you. Meditation, prayer, journaling, deep breathing. These aren't just wellness buzzwords. They are resilience practices. They train your nervous system to stay steady even when chaos swirls around you. Armor tries to shut emotions down altogether. Resilience teaches you how to ride the waves. Community is another key to resilience. Armor isolates, resilience connects. You can't build resilience in a vacuum. You need safe people. People who remind you who you are when you forget. People who believe in you when you don't. People who sit with you in the dark without demanding you snap out of it. Resilience grows in relationships where you can be fully seen and still loved. Armor tells you, don't trust anyone, don't rely on anyone, you don't need anyone. But the truth is, we all need people. We're wired for connection. And every time you let someone see your real self and they stay, your resilience grows a little stronger. Resilience also grows from purpose. Armor lives in fear. It's always about what you're running from. Resilience lives in hope. It's about what you're moving toward. When you know your why. When you have values you refuse to compromise, when you have a vision that pulls you forward, setbacks don't derail you as easily. Pain still hurts, but it doesn't stop you. Because you're not just surviving, you're moving toward something bigger than the moment. Resilience says, this pain is part of the process. This storm is shaping me for where I'm going. And here's the truth. Building resilience doesn't mean you'll never get knocked down. You will. Life will hit you in ways you didn't see coming. But resilience shifts the story from, I can't survive this, to, I will find a way through this. Resilience makes you trust your own ability to heal, adapt, and rebuild. And that trust, knowing that no matter what happens, you will rise again, is what makes you unshakable. But let me be clear, resilience is not about enduring endless harm or tolerating toxic situations. Sometimes resilience looks like walking away. Sometimes it looks like saying no, setting boundaries, or demanding change. Armor reacts out of fear, resilience responds out of wisdom. Resilience doesn't mean letting life or people trample you. It means knowing your worth so deeply that you refuse to settle for less, even if it means hard choices. What I love most about resilience is, it doesn't just help you survive the storms, it makes you more alive in the calm. When you know you can handle the hard stuff, you stop living in constant fear of it. You stop holding back, you stop overthinking every move, you stop hiding behind perfection. You start taking risks, speaking your truth, opening your heart, because you trust that even if it all falls apart, you'll still rise. Armor locks you inside a cage to keep you safe. Resilience sets you free to live fully. So if you're tired of carrying armor, if you're exhausted from pretending to be untouchable, if you're longing for a deeper, freer way to live, the invitation is clear: build inner resilience instead. Let yourself feel. Let yourself risk. Let yourself fail. Let yourself heal. Surround yourself with people who remind you of your strength. Anchor yourself in purpose that keeps you moving forward. And every time life knocks you down, choose to rise. Not harder, not colder, but softer and stronger at the same time. Because the world doesn't need more armored hearts. It needs resilient souls. Souls that can bend without breaking. Souls that can walk through fire and still love. Souls that prepare not by closing off, but by opening up. Armor may keep you safe for a season, but resilience will carry you for a lifetime. And when the next chapter comes, when the future shows up uninvited, you won't just survive it. You'll stand in it whole, grounded, and unafraid. Living aligned rather than distracted is one of the most powerful choices you can make for your soul. We live in a world where distraction is not only available, it's aggressively marketed. The pull of your phone, endless notifications, the temptation to scroll through someone else's highlight reel instead of paying attention to your own life. It all creates noise. And that noise drowns out the whisper of what matters. We numb, we procrastinate, we overfill our schedules, and then we wonder why we feel unfulfilled, anxious, or disconnected. Distraction feels harmless in the moment, but over time it steals our clarity, our energy, and our very sense of self. Living aligned is the opposite of that. It's not about perfection, and it's not about being rigid. It's about living in a way where your choices reflect your values, your time reflects your priorities, and your soul feels at peace because you're not living someone else's version of success. When we live aligned, we start making decisions from a place of integrity rather than fear or comparison. Alignment brings a sense of groundedness, where your yes means yes, your no means no, and your soul isn't constantly at war with itself. Here's the hard truth. Most of us are living distracted because distraction is easier than alignment. It's easier to scroll than to sit with the ache of loneliness. It's easier to binge, watch than to face the fact that your dream requires hard work and courage. It's easier to say yes to everyone else than to admit you need boundaries. Distraction doesn't ask much of us. It just keeps us comfortable. Alignment, on the other hand, requires courage. It asks us to stop pretending, to take ownership of our lives, and to live in a way that matches our deepest truths. When you start living aligned, you begin to notice how much of your life has been spent trying to please, prove, or perform for others. You begin to realize how often you've sacrificed what you truly wanted because you were afraid of disappointing someone else. Alignment means pausing long enough to ask, what actually matters to me? What do I want my life to stand for? If I had only 1 year left to live, would I still be living this way? Those questions are uncomfortable, but they are the doorway to a life that feels authentic. Think about the feeling of being fully present in a conversation, where you're not half on your phone, half planning your to-do list, but actually listening. That presence is what alignment feels like in your soul. It's when your values and your actions are walking hand in hand. It doesn't mean you'll never feel tension or doubt, but it means you won't be at war with yourself every day. Living aligned also means making peace with the fact that you cannot do it all. We try to juggle everything: career, family, friendships, goals, obligations, and then we wonder why we feel stretched thin. Alignment invites you to let go of the things that are not yours to carry. It's not selfish to say no, it's soulful. It's about creating enough space in your life to hear your own voice and to give your energy to what actually matters. One of the most profound shifts that happens when you choose alignment over distraction is that you start to notice the sacred in ordinary moments. Distraction numbs you to the beauty right in front of you. Your child's laughter, the way the sunlight hits the window, the joy of a quiet cup of coffee. When you're constantly distracted, those moments slip by unnoticed. But when you live aligned, you're awake to them. And those small, sacred moments are what actually feed your soul. But let me be clear, alignment is not about hustling harder, being more productive, or checking off more boxes. It's about slowing down enough to make sure that the path you're on is actually your path. So many of us wake up one day and realize we've climbed a ladder of success only to find it leaning against the wrong wall. Alignment helps prevent that heartbreak. It ensures that the life you're building is one that reflects your deepest truth, not the world's loudest demands. Of course, living aligned requires boundaries. You cannot stay aligned if you're constantly saying yes to things that pull you away from what matters. Boundaries are not walls to keep people out. They're gates that help you protect what is sacred in your life. Saying no isn't a rejection of others. It's a declaration of what you value. Every time you set a boundary, you're reminding yourself and the world, this is who I am. This is what matters to me. That's not selfish. That's alignment. Alignment also requires vulnerability, Because the moment you stop living distracted and start living aligned, people will notice. Some will celebrate you, but others might resist, because your courage will confront their comfort. Choosing alignment means risking judgment, misunderstanding, and even rejection, but it also means gaining freedom, authenticity, and peace. And in the long run, the people who truly love you will love the real you, the one living aligned, not the distracted version who is performing for approval. Another piece of alignment is listening to your body. Distraction often numbs us from the signals our bodies are giving. We push through exhaustion, we ignore anxiety, we silence the whisper that something doesn't feel right. Living aligned means tuning back in. Your body is wise. It tells you when you're living out of sync. That knot in your stomach, that heaviness in your chest, that fatigue that won't go away, those are signals. Alignment invites you to listen and respond with compassion, not avoidance. So how do you begin living aligned in a distracted world? You start small. 5 minutes of stillness before grabbing your phone in the morning. Saying no to one commitment that doesn't reflect your values. Choosing presence in one conversation today instead of multitasking. Little acts of alignment create momentum, and over time they shift the way you live. The truth is, the future doesn't need you distracted. It doesn't need you numbed out, disconnected, or living on autopilot. The future needs you awake, present, and aligned with who you really are. Because what's coming will require your whole self. Not the half-present version, but the grounded, courageous one. When you live aligned, your soul is ready for whatever comes. You'll face the unknown with clarity, because you'll know who you are. You'll handle both blessings and storms with integrity, because your values will guide you. And you'll discover that alignment brings something distraction never could peace. Because at the end of the day, distraction offers comfort, but alignment offers freedom. And your soul deserves freedom. Preparing your soul doesn't mean you'll never stumble, cry, or get lost. It means you'll know how to rise. It means you'll meet the future with open hands instead of clenched fists. And it means that no matter what's coming, you will not face it empty. You'll face it anchored, faithful, healed, resilient, and aligned. Because the future doesn't ask for perfection. It asks for presence.